Situated in northeastern Indiana, 120 miles from Indianapolis, the city of Fort Wayne is nestled in the heart of Allen County. With origins stretching back to the late 1700s, Fort Wayne has been known by many nicknames throughout its history: Gateway to the West, Summit City, City of Churches, and the Happiest City. Perhaps its most curious nickname is the City That Saved Itself, the result of a sandbag brigade by citizens during the flood of 1982. This particular nickname could also apply to a well-known building woven deep into the fabric of that city's history. This is the story of the theater that saved itself and the majestic theater pipe organ contained within. On May 14, 1928, the doors of the magnificent M. Boyd Theater opened in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Designed by A.M. Strauss and John Eberson as a movie palace and a vaudeville house for the Fox Realty Company, the M. Boyd provided a majestic backdrop for the entertainment of the day, complete with a grand Page theater pipe organ. The M. Boyd was complemented by the 7-story, 250-room Indiana Hotel, which wrapped around the north and west sides of the theater. Vaudeville was at its height of popularity, and the M. Boyd, managed by W. Clyde Quimby, featured acrobats, comedians, magicians, and musicians. For nearly 25 years, the biggest and brightest stars of stage and screen graced the M. Boyd's stage: Perry Como, Lawrence Welk, Louis Armstrong, Tony Bennett, Chico Marx, Doris Day, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Donald O'Connor, Marilyn Maxwell, Red Skelton, Victor Borge, and Artie Shaw were perennial favorites. Bob Hope's first job as Master of Ceremonies was at the M. Boyd. Over time, television and talkies slowly eroded the popularity of silent films and vaudeville acts, the mainstay of the M. Boyd. In August 1952, Alliance Theaters Corporation took over management of the M. Boyd and closed the building for 3 months to completely refurbish and redecorate the lobby and auditorium. Reopening on November 12th as the Embassy Theater, the new marquee announced to a sellout crowd lining the street, "Gala opening tonight, 6 p.m. Everything I Have Is Yours" in Technicolor, plus Buddy Nolan at the organ. The Embassy continued to operate as a movie palace under the new management. During this time, a small group of organ enthusiasts came together to become the unofficial guardians of the organ and its home. Buddy Nolan was one of those guardians. With stints playing piano at local restaurants and also employed as house organist at the Embassy in the 1950s and 60s, Buddy and his friends continued to maintain and restore the organ, often with money flowing from their own pockets. In 1963, Nolan played the first concert on the Embassy's restored Grand Page from midnight to 2:30 in the morning, beginning the tradition of Nolan's famed Theater Organ at Midnight concerts. Despite the late hour, Nolan's concerts were a tourist attraction for theater organ lovers from neighboring states. During this time, the Embassy Theater and the Grand Page held on, while other theaters in downtown Fort Wayne succumbed to destruction. Times were changing, and the Indiana Hotel was closed in 1971. Faced with the wrecking ball in 1972, a handful of community leaders and volunteers, led by Robert Goldstein, banded together to form the nonprofit Embassy Theater Foundation. Their goal was to protect the building for the good of the community and preserve the home of the Grand Page. Through the efforts of these volunteers and the support of a caring community, the successful Save the Embassy campaign raised the $250,000 necessary to purchase the building and rescue it from demolition, with just 2 days to spare. After the building was saved, the work really began. Volunteers, including Donald Fox, Ray Danford, Chuck Wiss, Byron Vogt, Ellsworth Smith, Bob Nickerson, Bill Zabel, Ron Kayott, Becky Sumter, and countless others, kept the Embassy alive by feeding coal, bought with their own money, into the furnaces to keep the water pipes from freezing. Efforts to fix the leaking roof and clean coal dust from the terracotta walls and lobbies continued. Buddy Nolan, Bob Goldstein, and Dine Pfeffenberger spearheaded the political and philanthropic efforts to create a long-term plan for the operation of Fort Wayne's treasured historic theater. In May 1975, Buddy Nolan played another of his famous organ concerts as an embassy fundraiser and filled the house to capacity. Later that year, the embassy was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. With the reopening of the theater under the auspices of the Embassy Theater Foundation, stars began appearing on the embassy stage once again. In the 1980s, the Fort Wayne Philharmonic also agreed to call the Embassy Theater home for many of its larger concerts. In 1985, the Ambassadors, the former name for the group of embassy volunteers, established the first Festival of Trees, which grew out of a recommendation from Barbara Wiggum. The initial festival raised $46,000, which was used to restore and renovate the front lobby entrances. The tradition of the Embassy Festival of Trees continues to this day with more than 20,000 annual attendees. In 1995, a major renovation of the embassy included expanding the stage to bring the theater up to the modern standards required by large-scale touring companies. The theater seats were upgraded, creating a seating capacity of 2,477. The renovation also included a facelift for the Indiana Hotel lobby and mezzanine, allowing the space to be used for social events. The renovation restored the stage and hotel to its former grandeur, once again making the embassy the showplace of northern Indiana. In 2003, the embassy dedicated its Walk of Recognition, created to honor the stars that called Northeast Indiana home. Perhaps the most visible renovation project in 2005 was the installation of the new embassy marquee. Built by Wagner Sign Company in Ohio, the marquee features the well-known design of the 1952 marquee with lighting components and restored infrastructure. The restored marquee features digital reader boards, allowing for show information and messages to be changed rapidly with a computer. Another addition to the building was the vertical blade sign, reminiscent of the original vertical blade on the theater in 1928. At the same time as the marquee and the vertical blade installation, the embassy added the Indiana Hotel canopy, similar to the 1928 canopies along the building's Harrison Street and Jefferson Boulevard facades. In 2010, the third floor of the former Indiana Hotel was renovated into a pedestrian corridor that links to a sky bridge across Harrison Street and a sky bridge across Jefferson Boulevard that enters the Grand Wayne Convention Center. This construction, funded by the City of Fort Wayne and the Goldstein Foundation, created the opportunity for the embassy to redevelop floors 4 through 7 of the Indiana Hotel, floors that sat unused for more than 40 years. This was followed by the capital campaign, A Vision for the Embassy, which raised $10 million for renovations that include a 2-story ballroom with seating for 300, rooftop patio, administrative offices, mezzanine lounge, classrooms and meeting spaces, new dressing rooms, and new bars in the theater's lobby. The project was completed in March 2016. In summer 2017, the original dressing rooms were renovated and refreshed, while the auditorium received new carpet with a pattern matching the original installation. The embassy celebrated its 90th anniversary with a restoration of its original Brankert Brenograph slide and effects machine located in the projection booth, one of the few working Brenographs in the country. The embassy also owns the world's largest collection of Brenograph glass slides. All the embassy's archival materials are being cataloged, and many materials are now on display in the Heritage Center, which opened in June 2018. Today, the Embassy remains a vibrant and integral part of downtown redevelopment and a regional leader for Broadway performances, Philharmonic and national headliner concerts, cinema, local music, and educational programming. A nonprofit organization, the Embassy is a leader in growing, teaching, entertaining, and inspiring hundreds of thousands of arts and entertainment patrons each year.